So I've been making videos about as many of the IMDB bottom 100 as possible. My latest one was on Piranha 3DD. Despite being made in only a week and me having to make 3 versions of it because 2 were blocked in some territories, it still quickly became one of my most popular videos. It could be because of the fact that it's one of the few videos on my channel to be longer than 10 minutes. Or maybe it's probably because of my jokingly clickbait title and thumbnail referencing the level of nudity that was a major selling point of the movie. Maybe my channel would be doing better if I just named all my videos sex. Anyway, you'd think with that success I'd jump right back onto that IMDb series, until I found out what was next on that list. A couple movies that are unavailable to stream on any service that I have, and then number 89, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. 4 meaning that I'd have to watch 3 previous movies. Alright, yes, of course, I've watched the original Superman as a kid, but none of its sequels and not since I was a kid. I felt like I should probably watch 2 and 3 before diving into 4, and so that's 3 movies I had to see, so I didn't think I could do that in just 1 week. And since I've already gotten an extra week, I may as well rewatch Superman 1. They're all on HBO Max, so nothing's stopping me. But my personal schedule is to get a video out at least 3 weeks in a row, and then I can take a week off unless there's some big movie or something I want to talk about and strike while the iron is hot. And all the moments where I could take a break, there were movies I wanted to talk about, if not on that week, then the week after. It's only now when I got the chance. Yes, I'd be interested in seeing and making a video about the Eternals, but I can personally wait. I'm probably going to see The French Dispatch during the making of this video, but it's been out a few weeks, so there's probably no rush to get a video out. So it's official. We're talking about Superman. First off is the sexy film Superman the Movie. I already have the trailer from that intermission in the Snyder Cut review. Now I can use it again. I'm kind of tempted to put the Snyder Cut trailer in the intermission of this video, but Warner Brothers filed a copyright claim against that video for using clips for that trailer without sound. Why would I risk doing that with sound? As I mentioned before, I had seen this as a kid, and watching it now as an adult, it's a little better than I remembered. The first big superhero movie. It was the most expensive movie ever made up until that point in 1978, with an unprecedented budget of $55 million? The average modern superhero movie probably makes that much in like 2 minutes. Man of Steel cost over 200 mil. Whatever, this gamble paid off very well because the movie made over $300 million. Oh yeah, the movie itself. After seeing a lot more superhero movies and having a more adult critical eye for this kind of thing, this is still one of the better superhero movies ever made. Just its ambition alone deserves praise. This movie covers the destruction of Krypton and then Superman's entire life story, including growing up, gaining his reputation, his relationship with Lois Lane, and then he needs to stop Lex Luthor's evil plan. Christopher Reeves remains the definitive Superman. Not only was he first, but he also manages to capture the personality better than anyone else. He has his charm, his kindness, his genuine need to help people. Nobody has ever embodied the character as well as he did. But not everything's great. Like that ending maybe strains credibility a bit too much. I mean, I know it's about a man flying around and lifting helicopters with one hand, but is it too much to ask for it to be realistic? I also think that the opening scene deserves mention. Because they decided to film a sequel at the same time, they also have a sequence alluding to the events of Superman 2. While modern movies would place that at the end, maybe even after the credits, this is the first scene in the entire movie. I know I said that this movie has no filler, but this doesn't really add much to the actual movie at hand. I guess it isn't filler because it sets up the other movie, even if it would probably be seen as completely pointless if the sequel was forgotten. I don't really have much to say about it other than to point out that this movie also influenced the superhero genre in its most cynical aspects too. Except it doesn't work as well at the very beginning of the movie. This is the flawed prototype. Overall, this was very good. I'm not gonna have to give ratings for all these movies, am I?
Girl, you know you want me, baby. You know I want you too. They call me Superman. I'm here to rescue you.
That rating doesn't exactly capture how amazing and groundbreaking it was, but there we go. Anyway, the first one was a huge success. It, along with Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, were credited for making sci-fi popular again. Which is ironic because, according to Wikipedia, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg were considered to direct, but both turned it down to make those other 2 movies. Although it doesn't really matter how much that one made because the sequel was already in production. And it's also good despite having some serious behind-the-scenes trouble. By the time they had most of this movie finished, the studio made them halt production to focus on finishing the first one. And director Richard Donner did not get along well with Warner Brothers, so sometime after the first one was finished, they replaced him with Richard Lester. A decision that was very unpopular with the cast and crew. And there were several rewrites and they needed to reshoot a lot of it so that Lester could legally get credit as director. Something about this sounds familiar. I'm sure it's nothing. Anyway, the Richard Donner cut was released in 2006. Anyway, considering how the implied Justice League movie turned out, the fact that this was and still is held in high regard is something of a miracle. Granted, I didn't dislike Justice League until I found out about the Snyder cut, but even if the Donner cut does make this a lot worse, it's still much better than it could have been. It continues on the tease at the beginning of the first movie. In this one, Zod breaks free from his prison and now wants to take over the Earth, and Superman must stop him. The plot's not as complex as the original. It's a pretty simple story, but it's an effective one. However, the effects don't really hold up, which is more noticeable because they're used a lot more here, especially in the climatic fight between Superman and Zod in Metropolis. While watching this, I was reminded of another superhero movie that I've seen more as a kid, Spider-Man 2. Both movies featured the heroes losing their powers to settle down, but they picked a pretty bad time to do that, so they end up deciding that they'll never stop being a hero again. Also, both their girlfriends find out their secret identity, although Superman erases her memory of it using another power that kinda comes out of nowhere. While Spider-Man 2 shows his struggle with his duties more, I personally prefer how Superman actually has him willingly give his powers up, while I'm still not sure what happened to Spider-Man. Anyway, the battle between Zod and Superman also seems to serve as an inspiration to the climaxes that modern superhero movies have grown to be associated with. A huge fight in the city that has a lot of special effects and causes a lot of collateral damage. It doesn't look as convincing, but you can definitely see that it was a peek at what was to come, especially in a certain controversial climax.
And Metropolis is in ruins.
No, it's definitely not on the level of Man of Steel's destruction, but the comparison still stands. This scene even has the same level of product placement, with the characters throwing each other into giant Coca-Cola signs and trucks with Marlboro emblazoned on the side. That last one is particularly bad because, well, aside from the ethics of advertising cigarettes in a movie aimed at children, according to Wikipedia, cigarette delivery trucks are unmarked for security reasons. Marlboro also paid to make Lois Lane a smoker even though she wasn't in the comics. And they paid so much for these promotions that it led to a congressional investigation. Oh, and Superman totally killed Zod in this version too. It's so heavily implied that the censored TV version needed to include an extra scene where he didn't kill him. So, yeah, still a pretty good movie. This could have been a total mess, but it beat the odds.
Call me Superman, beat tall hoes in a single bound. I'm single now, got no ring.
That was pretty good. After seeing that, I wonder what a Superman movie directed entirely by Richard Lester would look like. Obviously, that would be great too, right? Superman 2 ended with the promise of a Superman 3 right at the beginning of the credits. Now, nobody really cares because that movie wasn't that good. And I mean like it was pretty bad. A movie of this quality would be the worst in most other superhero franchises.
This time is going to be the best time of all.
So that was a fucking lie.
And also, they gave away literally the entire story in that trailer. No, not just spoiling some twist or giving you enough where you could figure out how it ends, literally showing the entire story except for a B-plot I'll get into later, including the bad guys getting defeated, and Richard Pryor's entire character arc in just that one trailer. Before I elaborate on the quality, let's talk about how jarring the beginning of it is. In the first two, we open on Krypton as Superman. In this one, the first thing we see is Richard Pryor at the unemployment office talking about getting a job or welfare type stuff. And then when that's over, he goes outside and the opening credits play over a bunch of weird slapstick humor happening around him. I'm talking about people walking into walls and getting pies in the face, and Clark Kent's only in like a couple shots of it. It's so different from what we're used to. You see, once again according to Wikipedia, the original script for the first one was a lot sillier, but Donner said he wanted to make something a little more serious. Lester, on the other hand, was willing to work with whatever they gave him for number 3. And Donner was kind of right. This is a little too silly for its own good, especially when we've seen how great this could be when it's taken sort of seriously. Anyway, the bad guy in this one is a Lex Luthor type. Not Lex Luthor though, he couldn't make it to this movie. A lot of people thought this was because Gene Wilder left because he was upset about Richard Donner being fired, but that was disproved when he came back in Superman 4. But he's basically the exact same character, an evil billionaire willing to do a bunch of really horrible things to make even more money. And he needs a computer programmer to help him with his evil plan, so he blackmails Richard Pryor's character into helping him. But of course, since Superman stands in the way, they try to stop him by recreating kryptonite in a lab, but they didn't do it right, so now it just turns Superman bad. Not evil, just kind of a dick. Until he splits into two people for some reason and they fight each other. It's kinda dumb. I know it's symbolic, but it's still stupid from a movie standpoint. Richard Pryor is good in this, I guess. Most of the humor doesn't land, but when it does, it's usually because of him. I'm not too familiar with his work, but from what I know, he's a talented, influential comedian, so this probably is not his best work. Overall, this is kind of the Batman and Robin of the Superman franchise. I don't remember much of that movie, but this comparison is from what little I do and what I've heard about it. And I'm sorry I keep making comparisons to later superhero movies. It's not the worst in the franchise like Batman and Robin probably was, but it is the one that's a lot goofier than it probably should be. One of my favorite lines in the movie is when Pryor's character is asked to take some weird balloon thing to the villain's lair and he refuses, saying, "I don't believe a man can fly." I'm sure the critics had a field day with that quote.
But I do know one thing, no. Bitches, they come, they go. Saturday through Sunday.
And now the moment you've all been waiting for. I present to you... While Superman 3 was a financial success, it was still seen as a disappointment by the studio, and it was hated by critics. At some point they also put out a spin-off called Supergirl, which I have not heard of and did not bother to watch. This was a critical and box office bomb. These disappointments led the producers to ask if the franchise was past its prime, and so Warner Brothers sold the Superman rights to the Cannon Group, an entertainment company that was on the verge of bankruptcy. Later, Warner Brothers made a deal to help pay off Cannon's debts in exchange for distribution rights to all of their movies, including Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. So I guess that technically makes this still a Warner Brothers movie. Since Cannon was going through money problems and allegedly had 30 other movies in production, the budget was dramatically lower than its predecessors. And watching it, it definitely shows. I guess one positive thing that could be said about this movie is that it might be the most meaningful and topical of the four. It deals with the threat of nuclear war, which was still a hot topic in the 80s. In fact, Christopher Reeve only agreed to a fourth movie if they made it about demilitarization. The movie opens with Superman saving people in a Russian satellite, which in and of itself feels like it's symbolically bridging the divide between the US and the Soviet Union. This movie is topical, but it's also, unquestionably, a badly made movie. Plot synopsis. So the world is on the brink of nuclear war until some kid writes to Superman and says he should just get rid of all the nuclear weapons. And so he publicly rounds up all the nukes in the world and throws them into the sun. I'm not a scientist, but I don't really think throwing a giant pile of nuclear weapons into the sun is really that great of an idea. But Lex Luthor is working with weapon makers who profit off the threat of war, so before Superman nukes the sun, he puts a strand of the Man of Steel's hair in the pile of nukes. A strand he stole from a museum in broad daylight by just breaking the glass around it and taking it out a little too calmly given the situation and the alarms going off. And then the scene fades out before we could find out how he could have possibly gotten away with this. And that creates an evil version of Superman who is for some reason already in a supersuit. And he takes on Superman in a bunch of really cheap looking fight sequences. Another thing that could be said in this movie's favor is that it's short. Every other movie in this franchise is over 2 hours long. This one isn't even 90 minutes. Mostly because after bad test screenings they had to cut out over 40 minutes of footage, including a large part of the plot. Worked out well on my end though, not having to sit through this for 2 hours. Alright, every movie I've seen so far on this list before now was a comedy in some form or another. While this one has its attempts at humor, it's still the most serious one here, which of course helps to make it the kind of movie I was hoping to see, the one where I can laugh at how bad it is. It's not trying to be funny or self-aware, it's trying to be serious, and ironically, that's what makes it funnier. There are a lot of scenes, especially in the second half, that would be played for laughs in a better movie. There's one part where the bad guy tries to wreak havoc on New York City by picking up the Statue of Liberty and throwing it at the city. And then Superman catches it and puts it right back where it was and it looks like nothing happened. In another scene, Superman stops a volcano eruption simply by plugging the hole. Another scene has a fight on the moon and Superman gets literally hammered into the ground like a cartoon character. And of course all these scenes have comically terrible effects. Some random new power he has now is the ability to rebuild stuff. The bad guy blows up part of the Great Wall of China and he just shoots some laser beams out of his eye and it just fixes itself brick by brick. Not like the bricks just fly back into place, I mean bricks just magically appear where they should be. There is some crazy stuff in here. This is the most fun I've had watching one of these bottom 100 movies. It's just completely broken. The story is bad and the effects are much worse. It's really no surprise that this killed the franchise. A box office bomb that couldn't even make its very low budget back. and it's cited by many as one of the worst superhero movies ever, and even as one of the worst movies of any kind ever. Superman would not come to the screen again until 2006 with Superman Returns. Although I still don't consider this to be the worst one I've seen on this list so far. Don't get me wrong, it definitely is from a production standpoint, but at least you get the feeling they tried, which is more than anybody could say about something like Stan Helsing, which is still the worst one here so far. This movie meant something at the time, and that should be worth something, but now it's just cheesy and really bad.
I can't be your Superman, can't be your Superman, can't be your Superman.